Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm afraid I can't do that, Dave.
All this and more coming up on This Week in Retro.
High-resolution color graphics.
This land of high technology.
The revolution in technology that made the information age possible.
Those kids are not afraid of computers.
The rise of the nobody. Did the 90s let just anyone rise to the top?
My Vintage Computer Festival weekend. There were a lot of old computers and I was up very late.
The evolution of Elite.
And tariff impacts along with Outrun news, of course, coming up on this week's show for the week of the 20th of September, 2025.
Up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.
Hello everybody, I feel fantastic today and neither of you two feel good. Why do you not feel good, Jason?
I feel fine, but there were a lot of old computers, and I was up very, very late at VCF Midwest this past weekend, so I'm still
Did you have
putting
a good
the pieces
time?
back together.
Was it worth it?
I did. It was worth it. It's just you're going to need a little more coffee for a day or two.
Chris, why are you feeling bad?
Man flu. just another bout of man flu. I swear I had it less than a month ago, and here I go again. So, yeah, we'll just get through today.
That's what you get from licking things. Well, I hope you will feel better. And we're going to get straight into it. There's lots to talk about today. Absolutely loads to talk about today. So we're going to get straight into it. These days, you don't reach the top from nowhere. You can't blag it. And I should explain the word blag for our worldwide audience. To blag something, well, it's a bit of an art form. It's a combination of charm, stretching the truth, perhaps beyond the point at which it can be still called anything like the truth. Maybe a similar word from North America is chutzpah, or furbo if you're Italian, or culo if you're French. They don't all mean quite the same thing. There's differences between them, but they have a common thread. And I think that common thread is someone who pulls off these kind of stunts, but we all still, for some reason, forgive them for their charm. And the best example of this is, or perhaps up to a certain point was, Peter Molyneux, the creator of Bullfrog Games, the man behind God Games, an absolute blagger of the highest order, beyond the point at which it's charming and well into the point at which he's probably no longer welcome. His blagging started off with pretending to be a different company when Commodore contacted him, and that's where he started. And then he's gone on telling people about games that would do things that the games never actually did. However, he is responsible for a number of absolutely stellar games, many of which are behind me on my shelf. Populous, Powermonger, Magic Carpet, Syndicate, Dungeon Keeper, and many more. And we're talking about him today because Ahoy has a new video out on him. Ahoy makes maybe the best documentary-style videos, does he? I think he maybe does, so you can argue that. They are excellent. And it's part one, and it covers his rise from a nobody. And that's what the video is about, calling a nobody to the point at which he is a somebody. And the video finishes just at the point where he's at his peak. He is, at that point, one of the biggest names in the gaming industry. He runs his own company and seemingly could do no wrong, or when he did do wrong, it didn't stick for some reason. And he had at least all of the British press hanging on his every word. And I wonder, Jason, did his celebrity status reach across the pond? Was Peter Molyneux the darling of the American press?
Black and White was where I think he started to become the brand, and that that's kind of I think that's sort of the pivot point around his career that we're going to be talking about. Up until then, I mean, certainly those games, Populous was a big game, Dungeon Keeper, a big game. Some of the others, Magic Carpet was very big as well because it was that thing you needed more than your 486 DX266 for, so that kind of put him on the map for that. But it was Black and White where he started reaching that. If not capital C celebrity, then a designer that people were talking about by name in the American gaming press.
Yeah. He was much bigger in the UK then, but he did reach out across the pond before his star was obscured. So a little bit of a spoiler here. When the next part comes out, it won't go so well for Peter. But this part does go well. It's a great watch, and it's not a long video. And I'm not going to talk too much about it here because I don't want to pull the rug out from under the video. It'll tell you what you need to know about him. But it got me thinking about the differences between how things were and how they are now. And I thought I just picked 4 examples of people who rose to the top in the 90s and ended up in charge of a large and important software label. And I'm going to compare it to 4 more recent people. And then I'm going to ask you two to be the judge if you think the premise that things were different to now is true. If you could be a nobody to the top then, but you can't do it now. You think that's true? So first of all, Peter Molyneux started Bullfrog and then God Games. Next example, Sid Meier, co-founded Microprose, co-founded Firaxis, grand strategy games like Civilization, Pirates, as well as Railroad Tycoon, but also simulation games like F-14 and Silent Service. Next up is Will Wright, who co-founded Maxis and made The Sims, SimCity, SimEarth, SimAnt, and his least famous creation, Raid on Bungling Bay. And finally, we have John Carmack, co-founded id Software, made Commander Keen, Wolfenstein 3D, Doom, Quake, etc. So 4 big names, made 4 companies, 4 sets of games. I think we were all dominated the landscape. I think at points in the 90s, you would see a significant portion of people who are playing games from those group of people. And now let's move to modern times. And here's my 4 examples here. So Eric Baroni created Concerned Ape and made Stardew Valley. Marcus Persson created Mojang Games and Minecraft. Toby Fox publishes under his own name and made Undertale. And Team Cherry, and this is where I was struggling because I couldn't think of one example that a really big game. So Team Cherry is what I chose. They made a big impact. So they made Hollow Knight and the sequel, which came out just 2 weeks ago, and seemingly everyone is playing. So what do you think, guys? Is it different now than it was then? Chris?
I think it is. It's definitely different from, like, say, the 80s where, you know, everybody was like single-handedly bedroom coding and could come from nowhere and become a someone, right? Whereas now it's all about the big development teams. But I guess the only one that springs to mind is from the modern day would be, I don't know if this really counts, but it would be Sean Murray of Hello Games. He was a former developer at Criterion Games for the Burnout series. And of course, then, you know, brought out No Man's Sky, which, yes, it originally flopped because, again, funnily enough, similarly enough, he overpromised and underdelivered, but has then gone on to drop.
Deliver.
Yeah, literally deliver for free. Like, rather than take a leaf out of the book of the big business like EB Games and whatever and charge for those updates or make it a completely new revision, every single, and these updates are massive. They completely change the game, and every single one has been free. The most recent one, I think, is it's a free update that allows shipbuilding, and it's generated a massive spike in players returning to the game again, with a reported peak of 110,000 players online on Steam this month, which is insane. So I think at that moment in time, it was the biggest massive multiplayer online space exploration game in effect, which was fantastic in terms of concurrent players at this point in time. So that's pretty cool.
Maybe my brain's operating slowly because I've been around, you know, machines running at between 1 to 4 megahertz all weekend. But I need you to explain the premise again.
So the premise is,
I'm not seeing. Well, hang on. Let me ask the question though, because you started talking about Blagging, you talk about Molyneux, and then you mention Wright, Meier, and Carmack, and I don't see those 4 as having a whole heck of a lot in common at where the Blagging is concerned. So right. You're just saying.
Blagging's where I started with Peter. But The idea is you go from being no one to being in charge of a company which releases games, where the games are anticipated, where the games are a big part of the industry.
Okay.
So all 4 of them did that.
Okay. Yeah, I guess my reaction to the 90s list was I would probably put, if you're looking for, like, you know, people and brands, I probably would have put, you know, Chris Roberts of Wing Commander on that list, Chris Meltson of all those Blizzard properties, StarCraft, Warcraft, Diablo, even Castle and Sperry of Westwood, because Command and Conquer was huge before Westwood got bought out. So the list of 4, I'm not sure about.
So they did very well, but they didn't end up making their own kind of brand.
I don't know. I mean, I was shocked at how big, you know, was attracted to how big Westwood became because I was first introduced to them through, relatively niche games like Mars Saga / Minds of Titan, the BattleTech games, and then when they got huge with Command and Conquer, I was like, oh, we were there when. But okay, certainly Minecraft Guy was nobody before he was Minecraft Guy, and he was on your list. So I mean, that's a 1-for-1 if you're working on that premise. If you mean in terms of like things being different, and I think maybe even No Man's Sky Guy fits into this a little bit because the model is such now that let's pick a number. Rewind back to 1990. If you designed one really successful game that everybody for the universe of everybody bought, you would have done quite well for yourself. But there was only so much money in that pool. Whereas in the 21st century, you can get hundreds of millions of microtransaction purchases. Perhaps Flappy Bird Guy kind of comes to mind. So if you hit it in that sense, or you hit it in the Minecraft sense, you're not necessarily on a career track to, great, I've had a very nice success, so I will now spend the next 20, 25 years as a vice president, as a creative director. It's, oh my God, I now have more money than I ever dreamed that anybody I would ever know would ever have. It doesn't necessarily create a management track. So I think that's part of it. You're not iterating through a universe of some millions of machines. You're iterating through a universe of potentially billions of buyers. And I think that changes what that success looks like, what that 0 to hero course looks like. So that might be part of why it looks so different.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why I don't think the premise really holds much water. I did initially feel quite strongly, oh yeah, it's much different now. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized, okay, things are different now, but it's mostly the same thing. Games are bigger now. There's much more involved in a game like Undertale, for example, than there was in making Sim Earth, for example. And you're right about the money. Back then, if you made Populous, you weren't set for life by making Populous. Even though Populous was such a fantastic game, it didn't set you up for life. You needed to come out with Populous 2, with Power Monger, with Magic Carpet, with all the things that came afterwards to keep making money. Whereas these days, if you come out with one of these games like Hollow Knight, you can make enough money from that just in itself. And also, the industry is many, many times bigger in terms of revenue than it was back then. So what was a big fish in the pond back then is no longer a big fish in the pond now. I mean, you take the total revenue of EA back in 1995 compared to now, and EA would be an indie developer now, rather than just the big, absolutely monster studio eating, devouring, dissolving entity that they are now. So I think the basic premise doesn't hold water, and I'm glad that both of you were able to kind of pick up on what was wrong with it. I think back then the industry was just smaller, so one person could come in to the point of dominating it in terms of coverage in the press, whereas not so much now.
And I think something, I don't think I'm positioned to truly capture all of the effects of this, but I do think that in addition to just the scale of it, so that so much is dominated from the top down, by Microsoft, by Sony, not just that part of it. I think that if you look at what started happening with really major games companies in the late 90s, where you had like Vivendi, which was not a games company, it was a conglomerate and very different businesses. As very different businesses started acquiring major labels, major studios, and publishers, they changed what that internal track looked like by the nature of their different corporate structures. And I think that and the massive changes in scale have changed what that 0 to hero track looks like, because there are just so many other ways for somebody who's rising to the top to go, other than to be kind of the Peter Molyneux guru or visionary.
I think if you add up the sales of in 1995 of Id, Bullfrog, Firaxis or Maxis, whatever it happened to be at the time, I think Maxis at that point, if you added all these up together, you would get a significant, particularly microboards, a significant portion of the market from these four. That could never happen again. You're not going to get someone coming up. You're not going to get someone coming up and making Undertale and then turning it into the next Microsoft, the next game studio. That can't happen. But you can still turn into an absolute superhero by making these games these days. So there you go. My premise doesn't hold water. Going back to Peter Molyneux, though, he is a fascinating man, absolutely incredible. Previous host Neil was stood up by him twice for an interview. So Neil's not a big fan of him anymore. But I love his games to the point where I just tune him out. His new nonsense now, I tune that out because his previous games were so good. Watch Ahoy's video, it's fantastic. Chris, tell us who we're sponsored by.
We are sponsored this week by PCBWay, I believe.
What did PCBWay do?
They do PCBs in their own way. CNC machining.
Milling? Yes,
Milling?
That's right. That's right. They'll even pick and place your PCBs for you if you want. One thing we really do like is their shared project library. And we always like to highlight a few things just to inspire you to do something, to be creative. So, Jason, what have we picked out this week?
Yeah, there's always cool stuff in those shared projects. This week, I spotted a mechanical keyboard for the Amstrad CPC 464, 464, 464, however we want to say it. If you're in need of a Cherry MX-based keyboard for your Amstrad, they can set you up there at PCBWay. Also, again, love a good title, the over-engineered breadboard power supply module. So if you need flexibility as you're developing projects, need an external power supply with a lot of options, toggle 3.3 and 5 volt power, useful when you're going between older and more contemporary parts. That is a project that they can put together for you. And being cat guys on the show, the Cat Tune PCB got my attention. It's a kitty-shaped PCB. It's a 1-octave piano with a 555 timer and a learning feature where instead of playing freely, an LED light shows up showing which note should be pressed, inspired in some musical keyboards that have this kind of feature. These three and many, many, many more there on PCBWay. Spontaneously, a friend was just talking this weekend about being interested in the project, and he went from, I'm interested in this project I just read about, to, okay, well, the minimum order from PCBWay is 5, so I wonder what I could do with those other 4. They'll take you from idea to action that quickly.
Yeah. Thank you very much for sponsoring us, PCBWay.com.
I was one of the thousands of people who gathered in the Chicago suburb of Schaumburg, Illinois this weekend for Vintage Computer Festival Midwest 20. The whole event was a really strong testament to the growth and organized momentum around vintage and retro computing. And I call those two out because there was a conversation I was around this week to try to disambiguate the two of them. I actually remember the definitions being opposite 20 years ago, but it stuck in my mind as one of the many, many things going on this weekend. This is a big event. There were well over 100 distinct exhibitors at the show. If you go to the website, which is VCFMW.org, they still have just the Excel spreadsheet of all the tables and descriptions. It's worth browsing through just to get a sense of it. Though there's images and video and such, but just the roster is really impressive. And in 2010, this event was a smallish room, a single room in the basement of an office building. And the other rooms in the basement was a Commodore-themed show that I helped put together. And VCF Midwest kind of just said, hey, can we have this other room? And we said, sure. So that's what it was 15 years ago.
So you've been there since right close to the start, or?
So the way that this show really evolved was there was a Commodore user group that had an annual meeting in the south suburbs of Chicago starting in the 1990s. So I and my then Young Turk buddies went and hung out there. And when that show kind of just spluttered to a halt in the mid-2000s, we now slightly older Turks took it over and kept going as a Commodore event. And then 5 years after that, some other people, some of whom were already part of the Commodore event, said, well, there were 4 editions of VCF Midwest, but that spluttered out. What if we revived that? So I've been there from before the beginning, but yes, definitely from the beginning of this 15-year run of VCF Midwest.
Because I always thought it was an Apple thing. I thought it was an Apple thing, not a Commodore thing.
So this is the only VCF that I've been to, but we are definitely I call it, when I was doing my MC work at the show, I say we're the fun ones. The different VCFs have different flavors. Fun, then.
That's what you heard.
Well, we're more focused on, you define what the fun is. You define what you want to do at the show and what you want to show at the show or talk about. There's I think a little less structure to it, and maybe because Chicago definitely is a tech hub, but it was not a major computer manufacturing hub like the Northeast had Commodore Gravity. The Silicon Valley had Apple and Atari Gravity. So you don't have the same plus industrial stuff. So you don't have quite the same maybe built-in biases there, but definitely not an Apple event. Short answer to that. Sorry.
I don't know why I thought it was an Apple one. I think it's because the hosts of Eaten by a Gru is this the one they go to? Is this the VCF they go to?
No, it's not.
Right.
I think Savitz,
this shows you what I know about North American geography.
Yeah. The Savitz, I think, has definitely gone to the West Coast ones, probably East as well, but and I'm not sure about Carrington.
Oh, it's Kansas Fest. Kansas Fest, sorry.
Kansas Fest. That is the Apple event, yes. And Savitz does go to that.
Yeah. I get it all mixed up in my head because it's all North America. It's all very far away from me. Sorry. I've stolen your thunder.
No. We talk to learn here. So yeah, these days it is a sprawling event. It occupies tens of thousands of square feet in a significant convention center, several conference and breakout rooms at this year's session. And the show is now run by, the Midwest show is run by, I say this lovingly, certifiable eccentrics and generous souls. So it has remained free to attend all this time, which is also not true of a lot of other VCFs. I can't do the entire show justice in this space. It's not only time constraints, but it's honestly tough to take everything in. It's not precisely a place that companies and creators converge every year specifically to announce or release new product, but that definitely does happen there. And I can run down a quick sampling of products and projects that either were released or announced or kind of soft launched or whispered about. One was Adventure the Quack of Dawn, a new HyperCard adventure for Classic Macs, and that was put out by Eric's Edge. And I'm kicking myself. I think I walked by it once, but I did not stop to play it. There was a Meshtastic network that was put up there. There's always something interesting and quirky going on in networking there, and I'll give another example in a minute. This time, Meshtastic is an open source peer-to-peer network that crosses a lot of different devices. A lot of people apparently just use a client like for a mobile phone and use their Bluetooth radio, but there are a lot of embedded type devices that can use it. And now there's Meshtastic 64. The little Commodore 64 can get on there on these decentralized networks. The experience is kind of like IRC, but with a 200 character limit per text message. So something kind of between SMS and a broader chat format. The Meshtastic 64 device by Jim Hopple, it plugs into the user port, which that's the left side one on a Commodore that usually takes a modem. No other special requirements other than a really solid power supply, which if you're using a plain 64, you hopefully have sorted out by now. And if you have a 128, you're fine. I'm told by Jim Hopple that it uses the Heltec V3 module for its communications, and that's I guess it's one of the better ones. You can tell us in the comments. I walked by and I did a double take. There was a working port of the original King's Quest to the Mega 65.
Which Mega 65 is that? That's the new one. That's not the Commodore 65. This is the Mega 65 is the FPGA one.
Right. The Mega 65 is the FPGA based recreation, but also souped up, enhanced version building on the C65 concept. Yes. But that project's been out for a while. So it looks like a C65 from the outside, but inside there's an FPGA. Yeah. I spoke briefly with the creator, Keith Henriksen, aka Awesome Dolphin. Told me that it is a complete port of the Sierra AGI engine, but at the moment, because of resource constraints, it probably really does only support the original King's Quest game files, and he is hoping to collaborate and maybe cut down on the resource requirements a little bit so that more of the AGI games, Space Quest and Police Quest and so forth, have a chance to run. And I have it on good authority that a new dedicated RAM expansion unit for the Commodore 64 and 128 is coming. The REU Grande from Jim Brain's Retro Innovations, designed by Adrian Gonzalez, who's sleeping on my couch right now. It supports up to 16 megabytes of extra RAM storage. Yeah. Good morning, Adrian, if you're up. It's compatible with Commodore's original RAM expansion units and a small and lower cost cartridge. And I'm absolutely sure there were more new products than that. Probably some I was even told about to my face, but it was a real busy weekend.
Was there an official Commodore stand?
So short answer, no, because there's no, there wasn't. There was official Commodore representation. I'll get into that in a minute. And whether he was acting in his official capacity is up for debate. But he did have a nice shirt on.
Did he have a hat on?
Had a shirt.
Right.
So you can't see absolutely everything at VCF Midwest, but there is everything from digital VAX mainframes to Eastern European knockoffs of Tandy TRS-80 machines. Obviously North American machines tend to dominate what's there because we can plug them into the walls and they just work. But there definitely were multiple sectors that had, that Spectrums, BBC and Acorn machines, things like that, along with those oddball items from the former Soviet bloc. And if you were first in line on Saturday or Sunday morning, you were even told by the affable MC to put on your name badge in the style of Sark from the original Tron, that if you lose your disc or fail to follow commands, you will be subject to immediate de-resolution. Got a decent response from the eager crowds. It is not a cosplay-focused show. Like, there's no organized cosplay events like there are at some other gaming events, but people do come in a variety of garb. My good friend Ella Schwartz came dressed as an AOL trial CD-ROM. Throwback to recent episode. The experience of going to VCF Midwest, it's kind of a wild combination of swap meet sites, fair, cool hangout with systems that are just playing games that the exhibitor wants to play. That's how I do my setup every year. And a collector fest. There's a working copper wire telephone network that links together dozens of modems and telephones there. And it really all works like a standard telephone system, rotary and touchtone dial. You can call the central office where guys in safety vests and hard hats will answer. You can ask for repair help, and you will receive a telephone bill at the end of the show with all of your activity and various administrative charges. If you were there and you wanted to meet people behind various YouTube channels, you could connect with Ron's Computer Videos, Mac84, Adrian's Digital Basement, Clint from LGR, 8-Bit Guy, Mac Librarian, Polymat, Action Retro, Taylor and Amy, Veronica Explains, some others. Yeah, Chris.
How bald is Clint?
He's pretty bald. See him in the flesh. That's a bald guy.
Nice.
And This Week in Retro. I understand the guy from that was there.
One of the guys from This Week in Retro was there. Yeah, he had the microphone a lot. He made announcements. You could go up and touch some Commodore 64s that he owns. And I did meet some listeners / viewers of This Week in Retro. Thank you very much for coming up and introducing yourselves. Original design legend from the original Amiga Corp, Dale Luck, was there. He brought those prototyped wire-wrapped boards that you've probably seen making the rounds in news items lately. And at different spots, you could also spot people like Ben Heckendorn, Jerry Ellsworth, Bohush Blahut, and a lot of other personalities from the 21st century vintage and retro scene. This event isn't normally the heaviest on organized presentations and talks. This year was absolutely bristling, though. There were 2 full tracks of presentations and a third room for overflow talks, where you'd hear about everything from early computerized air defense systems to the evolution of high-definition TV. You could get practical insights on the liabilities of electrolytic capacitors, best uses today for a PowerPC Macintosh. All these talks will be online on VCF Midwest's YouTube channel, probably a week or so after you're able to listen to this. But my point isn't simply to drive you to the replays, but to talk up the benefits of going to shows like this.
Just before you go on to the next point, I think Trickster does that, doesn't he?
He does. Trickster, who is a main, very core component of the VCF Midwest organizing team. Yes.
I'm looking forward to watching the panel because you're on the panel. I saw the start of it. I saw someone's mobile phone video of it, and with no disrespect to the sound on it wasn't so good that I thought, no, I can't wait. So I will wait in the official one with the recorded sound straight from the source. And there's a big long line of you, and you're in the far left, and there's Ayla and Amy and Ayla and Tony. No, Tony.
Ayla and Tony. Hey.
Yeah, those two. And Adrian and Clint and Action Red, loads of people on there. So I'm quite looking forward to see what you say about this show on there if anyone asks you questions about it.
There was a 90-minute panel talk that blended people for whom YouTube is a full-time job to those of us who just dip in and out of your lives every week. But yeah, pointed in talking up those videos, definitely please do, and we'll certainly link to them. But not just to drive you to the replays, but to talk up why going to shows like this can be such a good time, because you're going to meet people who are enthusiastic about the same things that you're enthusiastic about, or who are domain experts in a very, very narrow but fascinating era of technology. Or they'll teach you a new skill like soldering. Shout out to the Build the Blinky tables at VCF Midwest, who for hours and hours and hours taught dozens of people the technique. You could take in 3 different musical performances on Saturday night. Did you guys know about Taylor and Amy?
Why didn't they mention it when they were on last week?
Yeah, they're in a band.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah. So the Stop Bits did perform there along with a couple of other groups. And yeah, going back to your question, Dave, there was not a quote-unquote official Commodore presence, but Jim Drew was there. He gave a talk documenting his decades in the Commodore ecosystem, from writing software on an early production Commodore PET to his many entrepreneurial efforts in the C64 and Amiga scenes through the 80s and 90s, to today, as he describes himself in his words, a shareholder and the exclusive provider of keyboards for the new Commodore 64 machines. So he was there wearing a Commodore t-shirt. He talked about stuff and things. It was not a big, glass and flashing lights Commodore stand, but he was there talking, mostly about the how we got here things. He was not doing, stuff beyond, but yeah, we were able to have a nice chat and reintroduce ourselves after a little while. And there was also a guest announced relatively late in the game that really, really got my attention, because, I've been going to tech events, large and small. They did not find a way to bring him there. No. I've been going to tech events, large and small, since 1994. And, in that time, you learn that when there are VIPs there, it's a good idea to just kind of be cool. You've been there before, you've met famous people. But at the show was one of those, I'll just say, epoch-defining guests in the form of Lee Felsenstein, who is a truly legendary engineer. He came out of the Berkeley scene in the 1960s, going from free speech protests to designing and implementing both the Sol terminal computer and the Osborne, both of which were massively important steps forward in the early desktop and portable computer scenes. If you will permit a religious reference, it's like if Martin Luther showed up to your annual neighborhood church festival. Even if you are not a Lutheran, you know and respect that this is one of the guys, one of the people that shaped the world you are living in and all of the things that you're interested in, arguably the way you're living your life. He himself was quick to point out that the hardware implementations that he did aren't really the most interesting thing about him. He was part in the early 1970s of a group called Community Memory. And what Community Memory did was they said, what if we let normal people use computers, which was not a thing in the early 70s? So they would go out and lease terminals and lease connection time and put them in a record store and put what we would call bulletin board software, that was just local use there, and let people leave messages for one another and communicate and just see what would happen if we did that. So he said, not only what if we did this, but then did a ton of the heavy lifting in hardware and software to make that happen. And quite literally in some cases, because those old terminals were heavy. And, we're talking pre-1975, pre-Altair, pre-a computer is a thing you can own. He was there to help spark what we would call today, user-generated content, public information sharing, and personal computing all rolled into one. And that's basically the world we live in today. So just being able to go, all I could say when I saw it, I said, thank you. Thank you for all of this. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, so this is really bringing forward by almost 10 years. Well, not quite 10 years, the point at which you touch a computer for the first time and you type something on the keyboard and it appears on the screen, which we forget about now, but that was absolutely magical. Just doing something with it and seeing it on the screen. And of course, they were doing it on network, so that's pretty incredible. I don't have a lot to say about this, Jason. What a fascinating recounting of VCF. Maybe one day I'll go over there. Maybe once I'm retired, I will fly over just for the weekend. But it's certainly a long way to go. But absolutely amazing. Thank you for that.
Looks absolutely huge. I was actually watching some footage from Ron's computer videos on it on YouTube earlier today. And yeah, looks like my kind of event. So going to the US is certainly a bucket list item for me. So I would certainly see if I can tee up dates for an event like this. I think it would be a really cool thing to do. And actually on the topic of, I love looking at event footage. And I mentioned a few weeks ago that I dug out my old DV cam. I actually found on one of my tapes, I don't know if you can see that there, the bottom title there says in my messy handwriting, ECTS 2002. I didn't even remember taking a mini DV camera to that. So I've got some footage there that I've managed to pull off of an event from 2002 in the UK. I love what you said about all the YouTubers that you got to meet. And for me, that was the big standout. Just going to Kickstart last year was doing that, and going to VCF Midwest and seeing all those big American names would just be that on another level. That would be so much fun. The closest I'll get over here is, of course, Porg. We've got another event coming up on the 18th of October. So I assume you guys are popping over?
Yeah, I'll just nip over. Maybe I'll take a week off work and nip over to Australia to go and play Lotus on your Amiga.
So if it wasn't clear, like, this is my home show. It's my annual pilgrimage. If you've never attended a retro or vintage tech event, or it's been a long time and you have the opportunity, I highly recommend it. You know, the legacy of this show was a small group of dedicated fans in a basement. It's fun at that scale, if that's what's available to you. It's fun at this scale. So check your local listings, retro.directory and the like, and make it happen.
On to housekeeping now. So thank you to our patrons, who your support is very much appreciated. We have something coming for you soon-ish, kind of soonish, eventually, for you. Other than that, nothing really to say, apart from we're aware that the sound quality wasn't so good last week. We're wondering what can we do about guests in the future with that, because we'd like it to be a lovely thing to listen to. But the guests were great, so we enjoyed it anyway. And on to news in brief. G7VFY links us to an article from 404 with 23 people's experiences on how tariff changes have affected their hobby, not just retro. It's something that we had to a much lesser extent following Brexit in the UK. But now the US has suddenly changed, and for many people and small companies, it's hard to cope with. Not just tariffs, but the removal of the de minimis rule, which meant that small parcels were exempt from customs. That rule's gone, so now small parcels are being held up. And I believe that the same thing is changing in the EU, at least. Not in the UK, I think. The UK, at the moment, in the UK, when you buy something online, you pay the tax for it at the point of sale. So you buy something on eBay, you pay the tax there and then, and it sails through customs to you. And that's what's happening in the world. Before it was ready to happen. But what's happening in the world is we're moving to a point where instead of something arriving at customs and having to pay the fee, we're trying to move to a point where you buy something online and you pay the customs, the tax online, and it gets through to you smoothly. Once that sorts itself out, things will be better. But there's a lot of disruption caused in the meantime. E-commerce is difficult for people. It's strange because some people are saying, yeah, this really affects my business because this de minimis rule means that people find it cheaper to buy something from China than it is to buy from the local store. And on the other hand, other people are saying it's cheaper because of the de minimis thing, because they can buy things in from China to make the goods they sell without having to pay a lot on them. So it's really difficult. So yeah, it's quite an interesting article. And just at the moment, be aware of tariffs and so on. And you know, as usual, we're not going to comment on the political side of things, just the practical.
In other news, the C64 did get a version of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Sadly, it was the action game, which wasn't great. However, a fan prototype from the 2000s of the much better regarded adventure game has been found for it. And Rich 2600 links us to Games That Weren't article on it.
And this week in Outrun content, Outrun Petski is out, and I'm told it looks great by the experts. It runs fast, looks really playable. Petsky is Commodore's character graphics font. Sometimes people call it medium resolution, and using it instead of high-res bitmap on the C64, you can sometimes get interesting and faster game effects. Andy AI Cause has made this, and it's nearly complete. Thank you, Projecto6502, for the link.
CRG has let us know about the user group he's created in Belfast. So this is the prototype of what will become VCF Belfast, maybe, in future years to come, because that's exactly how it happened with VCF. Going to Jason. So, after the success of last year, Amiga is back in Belfast on the 1st of November, 2025. We're meeting at the Maywee Building in Belfast City Centre from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Bring your own system to show or just come along for the crack. Free tickets are available now on Retro Directory. That's retrodirectory.com/E777. And Glenn did ask me to point out this is a user group meeting rather than a show. So don't turn up expecting to see presentations and so on. Turn up to have a chat to people about their Amigas. So good luck to that. This is the second one. First one's a big success. Good luck to Glenn.
Computer gaming started on the PDP-1. Probably, not quite, but it's certainly where many games have their original roots. And the PDP is where the first widely distributed game comes from. Grant Me Strength has a long and detailed post on the subreddit about this and the kit being worked on.
Obsolescence are making a development board for it.
And there's a police raid in the UK recently involving some Sega development kits being seized. All of this hinges around the fact that development kits are generally not owned by the people using them. They remain the property of the original maker, manufacturer, Sega in this case. There are articles on time extension, however, that seem to indicate that everything's not quite as clear-cut as that. Multiple twirlers have posted updates on these stories as they unfold, including Southern Grass 416, so thank you for that.
And there's much more in the subreddit. The subreddit is where you would go to submit any articles you'd like us to talk about or suggest to talk about. Upvote and downvote things, add your comments, and answer the question of the week. And if you want to go there, Jason, what's the URL?
That is reddit.com/r/thisweekinretro.
Or from Chris is reddit.com/retro. Poor Chris.
That's a very good impression this week.
Chris, it's time for your story. Good luck with it. I hope you manage to make it through without losing your voice.
I'm just going to cough openly into the microphone just to annoy you. So here's a really nerdy story from about 30 years ago. So my wife and I were visiting some college friends in Somerset. They lived on a dairy farm, and with a wonderful open space and next to zero light pollution, they suggested we do some moon gazing that evening. So some of the afternoon was spent setting up a rather large and impressive telescope and ensuring it never pointed at the sun and set itself on fire, which it nearly did at one point. But it was when they pulled out some star charts and I started looking over them that I spied a familiar name, Fomalhaut. And without thinking, I pointed and gave a chuckle and said out loud, "I've been there." It was instinctive as when I used to regale another friend of mine about F-16 combat missions I'd flown. Now, of course, I've never flown an F-16 in my life, and I've certainly never physically travelled to Fomalhaut. But I had in my mind most certainly been transported there in my imagination through playing Elite 2 Frontier. And even though I knew the game was based on our very own Milky Way galaxy, seeing that name or a star I'd visited often named in this real-world star map, it was kind of surreal. Dave's holding up his multiple Elite boxes as I go through this. And this is what it's like when worlds collide. This is what it's like. A new video about the Elite franchise has dropped, and it's by a new channel called A Retro Games Look and shared with us by PD Project. That's how I'm going to pronounce his name. It's titled Elite Timeline Evolution from 84 to the Future. And when I jumped in to watch, I expected the usual voiceover telling me how Elite first came out on the BBC Micro in 1984, programmed with 32 kilobytes of memory by David Braben and Ian Bell, and then expanding on its evolution through to the present day. But there was none of that. And let's be honest, most of us have heard the story a million times. Now, what I was treated to was a cinematic extravaganza with plenty of the blue Danube Waltz by J. Strauss II as the soundtrack. The video opens with the original BBC Micro port graphics and then jumps through various 8 and 16-bit ports as it talks about docking and trading procedures, and then changes up, evolving to the Amiga graphics for Elite 2 Frontier. Not with the normal intro that everybody tests their Amiga accelerators with, although that does feature, but instead it's kind of a recreation of some of the Planet sort of dancing scenes that you get from the opening scenes of a 2001 A Space Odyssey, set to the very eerie Requiem by Giorgio Ligeti from the same movie. And then swapping up to a dubstep version of also Sprach Zarathustra by Richard Strauss. Yep. While an accelerated version, or a very sped up version, should I say, of the normal game's intro plays out. The video then skips first encounters to leap forward into Elite Dangerous footage. And that's a massive contrast in graphics fidelity and realism, with planet rises and scenes that quite frankly could be in a fan movie. And the video brilliantly ends with footage of a space station in Elite Dangerous rotating, and then it perfectly crossfades into the same space station rotating on the BBC Micro original wireframe graphics, and it just perfectly closes the video off. Have you guys watched this video, guys? And any thoughts? And also space exploration games in general. We've already mentioned No Man's Sky once this morning. New or old, are they your thing? Have you been to Fomalhaut recently, Jason?
Before you start, Jason, I think you're about to mean mostly harmless, not completely harmless.
That's funny. I wasn't going for the rank /
you should.
But you're right. I missed the opportunity. Well, let's just talk about it, because I do know what you mean, and reflexively claiming that you've been to Fomalhaut is mostly harmless, at least, if not completely harmless. I do think that one's digital experiences can convince one that one knows much more about a real experience than one really does, and that can be dangerous. But until you start absolutely insisting that you've traveled to the stars, that you understand the effects of gravity in the Fomalhaut system, or whatever, you're probably fine. I was not able to tune into this video by time we recorded. VCF took me out of a lot of video watching time. This is probably, as far as space exploration goes, probably as good a time as any to mention that not long ago, as a full-grown man, I spent an inordinate amount of time digging through the original Elite Games system generator routine, trying to see which rude words could be generated. There's the infamous story about how they kept playing with the galaxy seeds to make sure that none did. But I'm like, yeah, but what can you actually get? Could you get that? Could you get that? I spent a lot of time working on that. I never, unfortunately, the one I really wanted to find isn't possible to generate. But sadly.
God, this is confession time, actually, talking about planet names. Obviously, in No Man's Sky, part of the thing is you name stuff as you discover it, and all the systems and planets are called undiscovered. So my trolling to the No Man's Sky community was every time I discovered a new system, I would name it Undiscovered.
You think it would have stopped you from doing that?
No, it didn't. So I knew that other players would come along and find that it was undiscovered and try naming it, but wouldn't be able to. I found it hilarious. Sorry, that's my kind of sense of humor.
I have defeated Lord Chaos. I've defeated Mangar the Dark. The same goes for Sarah Volkanshiv, John Irenicus, and Amelie-san. I am the hero of Darkmoon. This video and what you've been talking about is everything for me in gaming, in films and TV and novels. I love going on ventures to places. I love this kind of thing. And what Elite does for me, but a few others do, is take me to real places that kind of do exist. The science as we understand it tells us that there's no chance of me visiting the stars. Leaving our solar system seems almost impossible. And the time involved in traveling even to our nearest neighbor means that it is not possible, not just by the technology we have, but by any technology that we can imagine. But there are real places out there. There are all these different stars that we could visit eventually if the technology is there. They exist, but we'll never go there. But this makes it possible for us to visit in some way to do that. The Game Over planet. Yeah, well, that's where you want to go.
No, I was trying to get you probably can't. There we go. If I go down, it's not the
star map.
I've got the star map on my wall from Frontier. Yeah.
And the idea that I've been to Miller Depot and Barnard Star, which is a real place. It's not a real place, but it's kind of real. So yeah, that's what Frontier did for me. Mass Effect does make me feel like I was in space. Mass Effect was fantastic. Less so as the series went on and it kind of circled in itself into a console looter shooter game. But Mass Effect did make you feel as if you're in space, but nothing quite the same as Elite 2 and onwards, where they use real space as the model, or kind of use real space as the model. And it was kind of real. It was kind of real. I played EVE Online many years ago, and that managed it too. But again, it wasn't quite kind of real. Elite beats them all in terms of that.
I agree. Do check out the video. It's stunning. And I'm not sure how much he's actually done the gameplay himself. Some of it is obviously pre-rendered or pre-created demo footage and stuff like that. So just take it for what it is. But it's nicely put together.
It's like an art piece, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, I think so. And it's from a fresh, sub 1,000 subs channel. So he's put a lot of effort into it.
Kept giving me messages, though, but not been able to do something.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, don't know.
The voiceover, the title of today's show, the voiceover from HAL on it saying, sorry, David,
sorry. I totally missed that reference. Anyway.
You need your bed.
Yeah, I do need my bed. Speaking of Elite Dangerous, actually, they finally added the Panther Clipper, which was a massive ship from Frontier and First Encounters, which you could just load up with shield generators and turrets and pretty much make it invincible, which is fantastic. And on a sci-fi note, you don't get a shill from me often, but I am going to do a shill. And this is no financial thing for me. It's for my son. I'll drop a link in the show notes. But my son Luke has just published his first sci-fi novel called The Horizon Events A Veil Is Torn. And in fact, I've been given permission to show. This was book 1 taken out of his first batch, the first book he lifted out the box, and he's signed that for me. So do look out for that. Just look up Luke A. Winter Writing on Facebook if you're into sci-fi stuff. You might find it of interest. If you don't, then you don't. I won't shill it on here again, but I'm extremely proud of him, of course, and this is my way of supporting him. My actual way of supporting him during development of the book was I refused to read a single word of a single draft. And instead I said, I will read your book when you've got it published and it's in my hand. So I guess I've got some reading to do. Maybe I'll read it on my way.
If you get stuck at any big words.
Yes, I'll get stuck on all the big words. So I think I'll have plenty of time to read it on my way back to Formalhot in my Panther Clipper.
So on to the question of the week. And last week we said Christopher Drum had a spotlight shone on him in the last episode. What other retro trailblazers do you think deserve more respect? So it is now out of contest mode. And I'll read out the top answer. It's Imaginary Swing 8606. And he says, me personally, it would have to be Mark from Mark Fixie Stuff. People might disagree, but to me, probably gave me the confidence with his repair videos to carry out my own retro repairs. Also, some notables will be Jan Beta, Adrian from the Digital Basement, and David Murray. All the plaudits are equally deserved and owed a big thanks from me.
Kari Lawyer. Kari rhymes with Atari in her own words. She has loads of YouTube videos about everything retro. My kids like her, so it's a way to bring them into my childhood. She does the whole gamut from playing old games to rescuing, repairing, damaged consoles from the tip.
Although a channel about damaging consoles would also be
that would be my channel, absolutely. If you've ever seen me pick up a soldering iron, that would be yes, treasure to trash. It was working.
Mention Neil, he's just finishing off the bones of the pump build, so more trash to treasure come from him. I was having a look at that this morning. Absolutely amazing what they've done. Someone does mention Taylor and Amy, hilarious and generally sweet and likable. Highlight of my week when they post a video.
Yeah.
Oh, and ARG. Someone's mentioned ARG. Pajaco's mentioned ARG. They're incredible. Boat and Aaron and the Brent are absolutely amazing.
Yeah, they're cool.
And It's Me Thyroid had asked, are we only talking about retro YouTubers and podcasters? And the answer was no, that wasn't in the question. That was how a lot of people addressed it. The It's Me Thyroid mentioned Alexei Eben, who's made a lot of mini games and ports. Jerry Ellsworth mentioned as well. And Midcon 113 in that same vein had said that they'd give it to the junior high and high school teachers that introduced them to the VIC-20 and Apple II. So we were looking for people outside of just the broadcast sphere.
So on to the question of the week for this week. And the question is, what's the best place that you visited through a video game? Any answer to that fits that question, go to the subreddit, reddit.com/r/thisweekinretro, and you'll be able to answer the question there. Any place at all you visited through a video game. There are loads of them. What a world of, what a universe of world creation there is to explore. So tell us the best there. We will see you next week when all three of us will be refreshed, but I won't be here. I cannot attend next week, so in my stead there will be a guest, but these two will be recovered and refreshed, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to go with a guest for you, and we'll see you then.
Bye.
I'm waving, Jason's waving, Chris is waving. Bye.
Waving. Bye.
This Week in Retro was written and presented by Chris from 005 AGIMA, Jason from the Retro Adventurers, and Dave. It was edited by me, Duncan Styles. The podcast version of the show is available through your favourite podcast app, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And the video version is available on the This Week in Retro YouTube channel.
Join our community subreddit at r/thisweekinretro to suggest and vote on the stories we cover on the show. Please give us a like and subscribe to help us reach new viewers.
If you enjoy our show and would like to support it, then please check out the link to our Patreon page in the show notes or description. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time for more up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.